$118,000 specificity, bonus amount as insider knowledge marker, a forensic analysis of financial information access, perpetrator knowledge hierarchies, and what specific ransom demands reveal about crime authenticity. Part 1. The specificity anomaly. Precision in ransom demands. The ransom demand in the note specifies $118,000. This is not a round number. It is not $100,000 or $120,000 or $150,000. It is $118,000, a specific, seemingly arbitrary amount that, upon investigation, matches John Ramsey's 1995 net bonus after taxes and FICA deductions, paid in February 1996. This specificity creates an investigative and analytical window. How would a stranger intruder know the precise amount of John Ramsey's bonus after tax and deduction calculations? Part 2. The financial information hierarchy, knowledge access. Understanding the significance of $118,000 requires examining what information is required to identify this specific amount and who would have access to that information. Information required to know $118,000. 1. Basic awareness. John Ramsey received a bonus. 2. Intermediate knowledge. The approximate bonus amount. 3. Advanced knowledge. The net bonus after tax and FICA deductions. 4. Detailed knowledge. The exact net amount of $118,000 specifically, or $118,223, the precise amount noted in testimony. Typical knowledge access patterns. Spouse, Patsy Ramsey. Would likely know about bonus, may or may not know exact net amount. Testimony suggests she didn't handle finances. Patsy testified, "That's not my day-to-day affair regarding household finances." She stated, "I didn't know that he had gotten a bonus. Likely had access to financial information if she sought it. I'm sure I'm privy. I can see it if I want to, but..." Children, Burke, JonBenet, would be unlikely to know bonus details. No documented access to financial information. Ages 10 and 6 would not typically have financial knowledge business. Associates, colleagues at Access Graphics, may know about bonuses in general. Less likely to know John's specific net amount after taxes, would need unusual level of financial information access. Former employees, like the individual discussed, whose severance was around $118,000. May know their own severance payment amounts. Less likely to know John Ramsey's bonus specifically. Would require access to John's financial information, financial professional, accountant, tax advisor, financial planner. Would have detailed knowledge if they prepared John's taxes or managed finances. Would know net amounts after deductions. Document access. Tax returns, 1040 forms. Pay stubs showing deferred compensation. Bonus documentation. Bank statements, Part 3. The knowledge problem, intruder perspective. A critical forensic question. How would an intruder kidnapper identify $118,000 as the ransom demand? Intruder knowledge acquisition scenarios. Scenario A, financial. Reconnaissance. Intruder researches. John Ramsey's finances. Obtains tax returns or financial documents. Calculates net bonus after deductions. Identifies $118,000 as achievable amount. Assessment. Requires significant preparation, access to private financial documents, sophisticated understanding of tax calculations. Scenario B. Conversation overheard. Intruder overhears discussion of bonus amount. Retains specific figure. Uses it in ransom demand. Assessment. Requires proximity to conversations. Specific timing. Memory for exact number. Scenario C. Workplace knowledge. Intruder works or worked at Access Graphics. Has knowledge of employee bonuses and compensation structures. Knows or suspects John's bonus amount. Assessment. Requires employment connection. Knowledge of compensation practices. Access to employee information. Scenario D. Prior relationship contact. Intruder has prior relationship with John or family, has discussed finances or seen financial documents, retained specific information. Assessment requires prior personal connection, unusual level of financial detail shared. Assessment of intruder scenarios. All scenarios require either 1. Significant preparation and financial research, unusual for impulsive crime. 2. Close proximity to the family or their documents. 3. Employment connection to John's company. 4. Prior personal relationship with the family. None of these scenarios explain how a random, opportunistic stranger would identify and use $118,000. Part 4. The Family Member Perspective. Natural knowledge access. From a family member's perspective, knowing or being able to identify $118,000 would be much more straightforward. Patsy's knowledge access. Had access to financial information. I can see it if I want to. Could review household financial documents. Had access to John's pay stubs, which showed deferred compensation. Could identify the exact net bonus if she examined financial records. The bonus showed up in every pay stub from 1996 on, according to John's testimony, Patsy's testimony on bonus knowledge. Initially stated, she didn't know that he had gotten a bonus. Later acknowledged. I remember him saying that that might be close to a figure that was a bonus that he had gotten. Claimed lack of financial knowledge. That's not my day-to-day affair. Yet had access. I'm sure I'm privy. I can see it if I want to. Interpretation of Patsy's testimony. Her statement suggests she may not have regularly tracked finances, but had the capability to access and review financial documents if motivated. A family crisis or dispute could have motivated her to review household finances and identify specific amounts. John's knowledge, obviously knew his own bonus, knew the exact amount. 118,223 was or something like that. Had it on every pay stub, could retrieve this information immediately. Part 5. Genuine ransom logic versus staged. Ransom logic. Understanding the difference between authentic ransom demands and staged ransom demands requires examining how these amounts are typically determined. Authentic kidnapping ransom logic. A legitimate kidnapper would typically determine ransom demands based on 1. Victim assessment. How much is the victim worth to the family? 2. Family wealth assessment. What can the family afford to pay? 3. Negotiation strategy. Start with maximum demand. Negotiate down. 4. Achievability. Demand amount that is theoretically achievable but difficult. 5. Generic scaling. Use round numbers. $100, $250, $500,000, $1,000 that suggest a kidnapper's estimate of family wealth. Authentic ransom psychology. Genuine kidnappers use round numbers that represent their estimate of what victims can pay. These numbers are often round numbers, $100K, $250K, $500K. Psychological anchor points, $1 million, $10 million, related to general assessment of family wealth. Not tied to specific. Personal financial details. Staged kidnapping ransom logic. A perpetrator staging a kidnapping, knowing the victim is already dead, might determine ransom demands based on 1. Personal knowledge. What does this specific family have? Wow, oros. 2. Psychological significance. What amount has meaning to the perpetrator? 3. Financial detail. Using specific financial knowledge to establish credibility. 4. Personal revenge control. Staging creates opportunity to assert control through specific knowledge. Staged ransom psychology. A perpetrator familiar with the family might use specific financial amounts tied to personal knowledge. Precise figures that demonstrate insider information. Amounts with psychological significance. Details that show intimate knowledge of family finances. Part 6. The John's reaction test. What his response reveals. John Ramsey's reaction to the $118,000 figure provides investigative clues. testimony on $118,000. It struck me as difficult to come up with. I thought, why isn't it 100? I would have wanted $1 million. It's just a very strange number. I think there were a lot of things left around that were purposeful regarding the amount. Later. I think that was just a bit coincidence. That was my net bonus after tax. Analysis of his reaction. John found the amount strange, not obviously connected to his finances in the moment. Yet when he analyzed it later, he recognized it as his net bonus. The timing question. The question becomes, when did John realize the connection? Was it 1. Immediately upon discovering the note? 2. During the morning as police arrived? 3. Later during police interviews? 4. Only after being specifically asked about it? John's testimony suggests it was not immediately obvious to him, but the connection became clear when he analyzed it. I think that occurred to me later as I started to think about what that number meant. Investigative implication. If John hadn't immediately recognized his bonus amount, this suggests the amount was not obviously tied to him, supporting that a casual observer wouldn't immediately connect $118K to his bonus. However, if a family member were orchestrating staging, they would likely know their husband's bonus and use it as a test of insider knowledge. Part 7. Patsy's knowledge. The critical question. Patsy's level of knowledge about the $118,000 becomes forensically significant. Patsy's testimony on the amount. When shown the ransom note during interviews, Patsy was asked about $118,000. "What is that to you?" She responded, "It seems like a very unusual amount of money." It's an unusual amount. She found it strange someone would ask for such a specific, non-round amount. Patsy's financial knowledge assessment. Claimed not to handle finances regularly. Stated, "That's not my day-to-day affair." Yet acknowledged, "I can see it if I want to." Could theoretically access household financial documents. The contradiction. Patsy presented as someone who didn't regularly track finances, didn't know John had received a bonus, initially claimed, found $118,000 to be an unusual specific amount, yet simultaneously had access to financial information, could have reviewed pay stubs or tax documents, could have identified the exact bonus amount if motivated. Part 8. The behavioral significance of specific amounts. From a criminal psychology perspective, the use of specific, non-round ransom amounts is forensically significant. Research on genuine kidnapping demands. Studies of authentic ransom kidnappings reveal most demands use round numbers. Kidnappers typically think in large psychological increments, 100K, 100, etc. Specific amounts are relatively rare. When specific amounts are used, they typically correlate to prior conversations with victims about payment capability, knowledge of specific assets or savings. Targeted. Kidnappings with intimate family knowledge. The $118,000 anomaly. This amount is unusual in kidnapping history because 1. It is neither a round number nor a psychologically significant number. It matches a specific, personal financial figure. 3. It demonstrates intimate knowledge of the victim's financial details. 4. It requires either extensive financial research or family familiarity. Art 9. Access documentation. What would exist if a perpetrator researched John Ramsey's finances to identify $118,000? Evidence of that research might exist. Documentary evidence of financial research. Printed financial documents, tax returns, statements, found in perpetrator's possession. Financial records accessed through legitimate channels. Evidence of financial inquiry or request. Copies of John's pay stubs or bonus documentation. Investigative finding. No evidence emerged of a perpetrator conducting financial research on John Ramsey. No documents were discovered in the homes of suspects. No one reported being asked for John's financial information. Implication: the absence of evidence of financial research suggests 1. The perpetrator didn't conduct external research. 2. The perpetrator had access to financial documents within the home. 3. The perpetrator had knowledge from living in the household. Court 10. The employee severance connection. Alternative theory. During investigation, another possibility emerged. The $118,000 might not relate to John's bonus, but to a severance or settlement amount paid to an employee. Employee severance context. As Access Graphics had recent employee transitions. One employee's severance involved approximately $118,000 in various components: severance, outplacement counseling, etc. The total package approximated $118,000. This information would be known to HR professionals at the company, John as CEO, the employee themselves. Other company management investigative problem. This alternative theory explains how $118,000 might be known without accessing John's personal financial information. However, it requires 1. Knowledge of employee severance details. 2. Access to that information. 3. Motivation to use that specific amount. Assessment. This theory is possible but doesn't substantially alter the core issue. $118,000 is a specific personal amount that demonstrates insider knowledge, whether of John's bonus or an employee's severance. Part 11. The psychological investment in precision. The use of a specific, precise amount, like $118,000, reveals something about the perpetrator's psychology. Possible psychological motivations. 1. Demonstration of knowledge. Using a specific amount proves the perpetrator has access to detailed financial information. 2. Control assertion. The perpetrator demonstrates they know intimate details about the family. 3. Authenticity creation. A specific amount might seem more authentic than a round number. 4. Personal significance. The amount has meaning to the perpetrator specifically. 5. Revenge or punishment. Using an amount the family knows creates psychological impact. Staged crime psychology. A perpetrator staging a crime to appear as kidnapping would want the ransom demand to seem believable, demonstrate knowledge, to misdirect, have personal significance, create psychological investment by the family. Using the family's own financial information serves all these purposes. Part 12. Investigation pattern. Who had financial documents? If someone used John's financial documents to identify $118,000, that person would need access to the home, knowledge of where financial documents were stored, familiarity with household document organization, comfort accessing private financial information, household document access. Financial documents in homes are typically stored in home offices or studies, in desk drawers, in filing systems, in personal files. Someone living in the home would know where documents were kept, how they were organized, how to access them without arousing suspicion, which documents contained relevant information. An intruder would need to search the home to find documents, risk discovery while searching, potentially alter the home during search, moving papers, opening drawers, etc. Part 13. The coincidence claim. Statistical probability. John Ramsey eventually theorized that $118,000 might be coincidental, that the amount had biblical significance. Psalm 118, a vengeful psalm in the King James Bible that mentions victory. Evaluation of coincidence theory. The probability that $118,000 was independently arrived at as 1. A biblical reference, Psalm 118. 2. That exactly matched his bonus amount, $118,223 rounded. 3. By complete coincidence, this would be an unusual coincidence. However, it is theoretically possible. Counter-assessment. If the perpetrator was familiar with the family and John's finances, they could have known about the bonus, selected the amount deliberately. Later, a biblical reference could provide plausible deniability or alternative explanation. The convenience of having two potential explanations, bonus amount and biblical reference, for the same number, creates investigative ambiguity. Part 14. Perpetrator Knowledge Hierarchy. What the amount tells us. The use of $118,000 establishes a perpetrator knowledge hierarchy. Minimum knowledge required. Perpetrator knew an amount that matched John's specific financial information, either through research, access to documents, or household familiarity. Probable knowledge indicated. Perpetrator had financial information access. Perpetrator understood tax implications and net versus gross. Perpetrator had motivation to use this specific amount. Likely perpetrator profiles consistent with this knowledge. 1. Family member. Would naturally have access to financial information, understand the family's finances, know the bonus amount to. Financial professional. Would have detailed knowledge if managing the family's finances. 3. Household employee. Would potentially have access to documents or overhear discussions. 4. Prior intimate relationship. Would have knowledge from prior proximity to the family. Sophisticated intruder with research access. Unlikely, but theoretically possible. Least likely. Random intruder without prior connection. Stranger without financial information access. Individual without motivation to use specific family financial knowledge. Part 15. What the specificity reveals about the crime. The $118,000 specificity becomes a data point in understanding the crime's nature. Staged crime indicators. 1. Personal knowledge use. Demonstrates perpetrator knows family finances intimately. 2. Psychological investment. Amount selected has specific meaning, significance. 3. Misdirection strategy. Using insider knowledge to appear to be external perpetrator. 4. Control assertion. Perpetrator demonstrates they understand the family's financial situation, genuine kidnapping contradictions. 1. Lack of round number logic. Legitimate kidnappers typically use round numbers. 2. Specific financial knowledge. Requires research or family familiarity. 3. Precision inconsistent with urgency. Careful financial analysis suggests time and planning. 4. Psychological significance. Amount appears selected for its meaning rather than its functionality. Conclusion. Financial specificity as perpetrator identifier. The $118,000 ransom demand is forensically significant, not because it identifies guilt, but because it identifies a perpetrator knowledge profile. Key investigative insights. 1. Knowledge marker. The amount demonstrates the perpetrator had access to or knowledge of John Ramsey's specific financial information. 2. Information hierarchy. The specificity narrows perpetrator profile to someone with household access, family member, employee, intimate, financial document access, or household proximity, motivation to use specific family knowledge. 3. Staging consistency. The use of a specific personal amount is more consistent with staging, using knowledge to appear authentic, than with genuine kidnapping, which would use round numbers. 4. Authenticity paradox. In attempting to appear authentic by using specific financial knowledge, the perpetrator created an anomaly that actually identifies them as an insider rather than external actor. The $118,000 specificity reveals a perpetrator whose psychology and knowledge base suggest household familiarity. Someone who knew the family's finances intimately enough to select this precise amount, either as a coincidence with biblical significance, as a test of the family's recognition of insider knowledge, or as a manifestation of psychological investment in personal financial detail.
Okay, I want to pause really quickly here. I don't know how long I'm going to stay, but I just want to jump in here really quickly, and I want to pause and kind of give my perspective on this really quickly. So, the ransom note sort of demands $118,000, right? And I want to kind of be very clear about what's significant here, and it's not just that the amount is very specific. It's that the amount is precisely tied to John's 1995 bonus. When we think about that bonus in a sense of after-tax dollars, right? My brother's texting me. After tax, after FICA, things like that. Not his gross bonus, his net bonus. And when you think about what that means, you kind of have to ask, how does a stranger know that number, right? And I think the deeper question, we've talked about that before, I think the deeper question that is overlooked is that even if a perpetrator, which John might claim, even if a perpetrator had somehow researched John's finances, we did that, couldn't find anything, but researched John's finances, even if they had access to financial records and could identify that he received a bonus and sort of calculate the net amount, right, to see, my problem becomes, why would they ask for that amount exactly in December, right? I think, if I remember correctly, John said that he received the bonus in January. It's December. That's at the end of the year. You know what I mean? Like what okay, I don't want to get sidetracked. We're at the end of the year and the guy is asking for the bonus that John got in January, right? Because here's the thing, that's like several months. You're like 11 months too late. Okay, so here's the thing. John received that bonus in January, so you have several months, and in several months, like 11 months, this is my thing. John could have spent that money on anything, right? John could have invested that money. He could have used it for they were doing home improvements. They were doing improvements on the home, trying to get the elevator out and all such as that. And, all the kinds of paying bills. They had a boat, they had a plane. John is constantly working on the plane. $118,000, especially in the house that they were living in, probably cost like $2,000 a month at that time. The probably today, a house like that is probably going for $7,000 a month, maybe more. Something like that, five to $7,000 a month, maybe more. But I think maybe at the time, it could have been going for like $2,000 or $3,000, right? If we think about $118,000 net, we just do 118 because I don't know the change that he got or the rest of it. Over 12 months, that's about $9,800, right? So if John is, if he's like, we're going to, pay rent, we're going to do extra things. Patsy was, I think, trying to throw parties. I think one of the parties that she threw was like $30,000 to $40,000. And we have no reason to believe that Patsy would slow down now. And I'm getting a little bit off my notes, but I just got to say this. We have no reason to believe that Patsy would slow down now. I'm not saying that Patsy would have spent $40,000, but maybe Patsy was all around the city. Patsy wasn't just sitting at home. Patsy was a socialite. She was all around the city, right? And so $9,800 a month, if we average that John could spend, but he has $118,000, but that's a bonus. He has what he's making, and we don't know what he was making normally or on a regular basis, on an annual basis, base and bonus. We don't know that. Could have been making a lot of money. But the thing about it is, when you get a bonus is a bonus. When I get a bonus, I'm going shopping because there's no reason. If I get a bonus, I'm going to invest it. Retirement, shopping, invested in my boat, invested in my plane, because John had a plane to uphold. But also John was fiscally responsible there in that he would, I think, rent his planes out to make them pay for themselves. So, but sometimes when people are not renting the planes, or when you're trying to work on it, do some upgrades, or just make sure that it's in tip-top shape, you're doing them yourself, or you're paying a mechanic or whatnot, that money could go fast. It's not like John got the money and just held it and was like, you know what? I'm just going to put it under my mattress and try to figure out what I want to do. John probably, now he could have, you saw the $7,000 up top. But $118,000, that's $7,000. Which will let you know that $7,000 probably wasn't a lot to John. But $118,000, John's probably going to put that in the bank. Immediately, that's going to go. I think he had an investment guy. I'm trying to figure, because on the same video, when we saw the check up top, there was a name of another guy. And I can't remember the guy's name. I can't remember his name. But we did some research, and there's some Reddit forums and stuff like that. You do some research and you figure out the guy's name. You look up who the guy is. Man, and I looked him up. I can't remember his name. But he was an investment guy he was an investment, not an investment banker, but he was like a financial planner or something. It's like a wealth planner or something like that. Something like that. So John would have probably immediately gone and talked to this guy and said, hey, I just got a drop of 118 grand. What can we do with this? Is probably what John would have done. But here's my problem. I'm running out of time. I gotta get going. That money would have been gone. It's no longer liquid money. It's no longer liquid cash. That money is gone. That money is, they probably made repairs to their own home. They probably made repairs to the Michigan home of some sort, done some upgrades, because it's free money. I mean, I'm already making money, just in my regular job. This is free cash. Puts it in a trust for Burke or JonBenet's college or just whatever. That money's gone. Probably in about 3 months, because if the money sits in the bank, somebody like John, if the money sits in the bank, you're not earning any cash off of that. You're not earning any interest off of that. You're not doing anything. So guess what? You're going to put that money in the market and make the money work for you. Obviously, right? And maybe somebody, who doesn't have those resources or who doesn't have that extra cash sitting around probably wouldn't be able to say, you know what, I'm just going to invest it. But somebody like a John, who's in good financial shape at that time, obviously that's what he's going to do. Invest it. Put it in like I said, put it in my boat. We're going to get ready to take a couple vacations. Going to fuel up the plane. And I think, like John said somewhere, maintenance on that plane gets expensive. So some of that money would probably go through the plane. So even if he just worked on the plane by itself, even if he just looked at the plane by itself, that $118,000 is gone. And so my problem is, why would this intruder think, if he's been tracking John all along, it's possible that this guy knows that money is gone? Where would John get the 118 from? Unless he knew that John was making 118 on a normal basis. And if he knows that John is making 118 or some change, something like that on a normal basis, because if you get a bonus of 118, you probably making more than 118. Probably making 200, something like that. Gotta be. You know what I mean? You get a bonus of 118, you probably, maybe, just depends. We used to pay out people. Some people, I don't know. Could be making 250 because we pay out somebody who was making 250. Base 250, bonus 30, so 280. And then they would get, yeah, the bonus is typically lower. The additional bonus, because if you're looking at salary for an executive, you got base and bonus at that level, base salary and bonus, and then probably pay out something that's under their salary. Like you might give them a couple of payments of like 150K, like 3 years apart or something like that, or it might be progressive in terms of like 150 for these 3 years, you stay with us another 3 years, you might get 250, stay with us another 3 years, you might get 350, you know what I'm saying? So something like that. But we will assume that, John was making more than 118. And so this person knows that John has 118. So, but even if John is getting 118, John is not getting 118 all in 1 month, right? John is getting 100, whatever. Let's say John is getting 200 a month, or I'm sorry, a year. John is getting 200 a year. Gross is 16 and a half, 16.6, right? So if John's getting about 16,000 a year, probably about 40% of that is going to taxes. So you're left with about, I'll say 37%. It's going to taxes. Yeah, so we'll do minus 0.37. So he's left with about 10.5, right? Let's assume he's a religious guy, but I don't know if he pays tithes and offerings. So we're just doing without that. 10.5 minus about, say, 2,500 for the house. Probably bills are going to be maybe $2,000 in bills, for all the stuff that they have. But also too, they have the house. Either they bought the house or they have the house in Charlevoix. Maybe they bought it, but they also have the house in Atlanta, so they're probably paying on those as well. So I'll just say, that takes another, I'll say 2,000. Got to pay those bills. This is kind of looking a little bleak, even at $200,000. Let's say you keep it light. We're not really there. Say 750 for one property and $750 a month for the other property. You're left with $2,500. They have the cars that probably cost $1,000 each. Ooh. Probably pay 100 minus 100 in full coverage. That you did $1,300 back in 1996. You got $1,300 left over. And that could be way off. I can't see John and Patsy spending that or being that fiscally irresponsible to be left with $1,300, but they may, maybe so, because like I always say, man, they went broke pretty quickly after JonBenet died. Trying to keep up with the lawyers, they went broke pretty quickly, is my thing. So even at that, you say $1,300. Let me get back to my point. Over a 12-month span, if you're like, yo, I see John is making some moves with the 118K, and that 118K is gone, but I still want 118K because I know John is not, he doesn't really have that much cash on hand. And so if we take $1,300 a month after all bills paid, $1,300 free, then you multiply that by 12, which maybe he waited till the end of the year to say, look, we'll catch him at the end of the year and try to get the 118 grand. John would have had $15,600 to give him, right? If John saved up all of that money and said, you know what, we're just going to save the rest. We're not going to do anything, which he probably didn't. But here's the thing. John's money, I don't think would have been in the bank. He probably would have had some money in the bank, but for John to go to one bank, John would have had to go to, he would have had to pull that money out of the market. Um, the market would probably be open the next day. Of course, he would have to immediately call in the trade though and say, hey, he would have to immediately call the broker or his wealth builder to get that trade pulled. Well, not the trade pulled, but to put in a trade, put in a sell order. Just take the price that he can get, even if the market was down. Hopefully the market was up. For his sake, that's neither here nor there, but put in a trade order, a sell order, get that money. But that would take like a couple days. So this person's plan, which was supposedly well thought out, is not so well thought out, because if John doesn't have that money in the bank, he's got to go to the market, which is a little bit more illiquid, pull that cash out. It's going to take a couple days to get the cash, or a day or something like that, get the cash and then go pull the cash from the bank. So asking John to get the cash the next day don't make no sense. In which you could say, well, that's why he knew that. That's why he went to his person. But see, that's why he went to his boy to kind of like, ask their bank and get the money set up, which that would make sense. But see, this is my problem then with the intruder. And I'll shut it down and get back so you can get back to watching. This is my problem. If the intruder did so much research, the intruder would have known that John don't really got no money. John, the money you're asking for is going to take a little time. So A, you would have put stipulations in place to say, I'll give you a couple of days to get the money ready. And then I'll be back in touch. He wouldn't assume, or they wouldn't assume, that John could just have the money the next day if they did their extensive research. That's the problem I'm having. The heck are you talking about? This person knew you so well that they asked for 118 grand that you did not have. And they knew it. They knew you didn't have it, and they asked for it anyway. They knew you were probably good for about 15 grand. They knew you didn't have that money. Why would the intruder set themselves up in such a way to hit a lick? That means rob somebody. Why would the intruder set themselves up in such a way to hit a lick on somebody who don't got no money? And I'm not saying you can't hit a lick on somebody who ain't got no money. That just means, you just, went after somebody who you didn't know. You just guessed. You hoped they had money. But that's typically somebody off the street. But if you're telling me in a high stakes gamble, you've been watching somebody for weeks, better yet, months. And if you knew that he got a bonus of 118K in January, you've been watching him since January. And you did all that planning to ask for 118K. You would have known. You wouldn't look. If you had access to his bonus records, then you also have access to know how much he makes on a monthly basis. You and whoever you're in cahoots with. So you probably wouldn't ask for 118K. You probably only asked for 118K, and I done went off my notes, but you probably only asked for 118K for something very specific. And what would that be? Why would you be asking for $118,000? To go through all that trouble and to not go through with it? To watch somebody for several months and not go through with it? Huh. But that's just observing. I'll let you get back to the video.